Joining us now to discuss this is Emily Kopp. She's a reporter for U.S. Right to Know, which has been all over this story and trying to get answers about the origins of COVID and our own government's behavior throughout all of it. Emily, good to have you back with us.
Good to be here.
Tell me what to make of all of this. It's not every day you get government officials saying out loud, here's how we hide smoking guns.
Right. It's pretty remarkable. So David Morenz is an important figure because he's at the nexus of Tony Fauci and the Wuhan Institute of Virology. So your listeners probably already know that money flowed from Fauci's institute at NIH through this organization called EcoHealth Alliance. And so Morenz was both an aide to Fauci for 2 decades and a close friend with EcoHealth Alliance president, Peter Daszak. So, Fauci has tried to downplay the money funneled to Wuhan as minuscule in comparison to his institute's entire budget. But we now know that the scientist in the United States who worked most closely with the Wuhan Institute of Virology, Peter Daszak, had a direct line to Fauci's inner circle. We also know that Daszak ingratiated himself with powerful people in Washington through these cocktail parties he would host at this ritzy social club called the Cosmo Club. And reading his emails with Morenz, it's clear these two were close drinking buddies and friends. So that brings us to June 2023. Around this time last year, The Intercept reported that Morenz tried to evade federal records retention and transparency laws by forwarding everything from his NIH email to his Gmail and deleting everything on his NIH email that he, quote, didn't want to see in the New York Times. So some important background is that under the Freedom of Information Act, or FOIA, everyday people are granted access to documents that could shed light on how public agencies are using our taxpayer dollars. And this is an important tool to make sure the government is acting in the best interest of the people. And our organization has tried to submit FOIAs for Morenz's emails, and we ended up having to sue NIH to try to pry these emails out of the agency. And the committee investigating this on Capitol Hill has also faced obstruction. So after about a year of obstruction by Morenz and even Morenz's bosses at HHS, the committee issued a subpoena for his Gmails. And so this is how we get this, explosive set of emails read by Comer yesterday.
Well, it suggests very highly that there are much more damaging emails that we haven't seen, perhaps because they've been destroyed.
I hope not. So the current status is that after this subpoena for his emails, including the emails on his Gmail, were submitted, Morenz turned over 30,000 of them to the committee earlier this month on May 1st. So we, the public, haven't seen these yet, I'm guessing because the beleaguered congressional staff are still reading through them, but it's already clear that they contain really interesting information, including these 2 emails suggesting that there is some sort of policy at NIH to help people evade FOIA.
So it's not just like kind of foreseeing that FOIA might show up, that these requests from people like you would show up seeking this information from the government. It's also that email that David Morenz sent to Peter Daszak. I learned from our NIH FOIA lady how to make emails disappear after I am FOIA'd, but before the search starts. So I think we are all safe. That's him plotting to delete information in order to keep it from the public. It feels like we're dancing on what could very well be a crime here.
Yes, agreed. This is clearly his statement of intent to violate federal retention and transparency law. My hope as an investigative journalist is that he simply forwarded emails to his Gmail and deleted them on his NIH email, thinking that that would protect him, but that we do still have access to that information in some capacity because, the other email that Comer read out yesterday suggested that Morenz was fully aware that there might be smoking guns in his correspondence with Daszak, suggesting he obviously knew that there was a possibility that the worst pandemic in a century started with a lab leak and that NIH research was connected to that lab leak, but that he would get rid of any evidence if he were to come across it, which is mind-blowing, really.
Yeah, it's remarkable. Let me play some more testimony from Dr. Tabak yesterday. He admitted before that congressional inquiry yesterday that we were indeed funding what most people would refer to as gain-of-function research, this in the lab research that makes viruses more infectious and more deadly to humans. Here is Dr. Tabak confirming that, and then you'll hear a little bit now. I'll play some flashback audio of Dr. Fauci back in 2021 denying that detail to Rand Paul.
Dr. Tabak, did NIH fund gain-of-function research at the Wuhan Institute of Virology through EcoHealth?
It depends on your definition of gain-of-function research. If you're speaking about the generic term, yes, we did, but this is research. The generic term is research that goes on in many, many labs around the country. It is not regulated, and the reason it's not regulated is it poses no threat or harm to anybody.
Dr. Fauci, do you still support funding of the NIH funding of the lab in Wuhan?
Senator Paul, with all due respect, you are entirely and completely incorrect that the NIH has not ever and does not now fund gain-of-function research in the Wuhan Institute
Do they fund
of Virology.
Dr. Barrick?
We do not fund.
Do you fund Dr. Barrick's gain-of-function research?
Dr. Barrett does not doing gain-of-function research, and if it is, it's according to the guidelines, and it is being conducted in North Carolina.
All right, so there you have back in 2021, Dr. Fauci said we're absolutely not doing this. Now the government's saying actually yes we have, based on the generic definition of it, and it's gone so far as this week. The other big news, Emily, is that EcoHealth Alliance has been cut off by the Biden administration. They've made this announcement that they're no longer going to be funding that organization. So what can we conclude from all of this?
Well, we can conclude that Fauci's testimony was false, and there is also evidence showing that Fauci knew it was false at the time. We have emails from early in 2020 where he says there was gain-of-function research going on in Wuhan using that term. We also know that he met with a virologist who specialized in coronavirus gain-of-function work, Ralph Barrick, very early on, and we know from Barrick's testimony to the committee that they discussed just this research, this gain-of-function research that Senator Paul had identified when he was questioning Fauci about this. So there has been some playing with semantics, I think. Gain-of-function research versus this other term called enhanced pandemic potential pathogens. But the definition of gain-of-function research at the time these research projects were approved by Fauci's agency was any research to make a pathogen more transmissible or deadly. And this research certainly met that definition. So I think it's kind of an open question whether that could expose Fauci to perjury charges, but it was clearly false testimony, and yes, Fauci knew it was false at the time. So with EcoHealth Alliance, they have also similarly, like Fauci, obscured the fact that they were doing this gain-of-function research, and they failed to report the fact that they did this experiment on a coronavirus that was described in the public scientific literature as poised for human emergence. In other words, it would only take a few genetic changes for it to be able to infect humans. And what they did was make it much more dangerous in mice designed to express human receptors. So it's sort of follows that they were making the virus more dangerous for humans. And they, were doing this experimentation with the Wuhan Institute of Virology and failed to inform NIH. There were also a lot of other problems. So you heard Fauci say that this research was set to go on at UNC, which is Barrick's institution in the United States, where we have more rigorous biosafety standards. Our organization found out through FOIA that that was false, that Daszak had written in a draft of one of his grant proposals that, so we're going to tell the Pentagon that we're going to do this research at UNC at a BSL-3, but actually we're going to downplay the involvement of China and we're going to export it to BSL-2, and basically in order to save on costs. Mm-hmm. So a lot of evidence suggesting that this organization is not a good steward of taxpayer dollars. so much so that even Democrats on this committee got on board with recommending that they no longer be eligible for federal funds.
Emily Kopp, finally, and thank you for your time today. Do you ever find it bizarre that this issue, as big as it is, does not receive commensurate coverage in the media in the United States? Because as it stands now, from where I'm sitting, it certainly looks very likely that U.S. taxpayer dollars were smuggled into China, souped up viruses, and may have resulted in the single biggest pandemic of our lifetimes. And almost no meaningful media coverage has really touched this except for people like you.
It's maddening. I feel like I've been shouting from the rooftops for a while now because I do think it's important to get justice and accountability for all of us who have been, affected by COVID, but especially for people who have lost loved ones. I think it's taking really blatant, unabashed corruption, like Moran saying, I'm going to delete the smoking gun if I find the smoking gun, to sort of break through all of the gaslighting that we experienced for years of, between virologists with conflicts of interest and Fauci saying that this was a conspiracy theory. So in a way, we're kind of lucky that they're so brazenly corrupt that I think it's breaking through all of the gaslighting. But I do wish it was getting more coverage.
We are kind of lucky that they're so brazenly corrupt. I think that's the quote of the interview. Thank you very much, Emily Kopp. Really appreciate your work and your time today. Good to talk to you. Thank you.